Good evening and aloha. I'm U.S. Congressman Ed Case, and I'm coming to you from Honolulu. I'm home for just a few days before I have to go back to D.C. tomorrow. Again, I represent Hawaii's great first congressional district. The first congressional district, one of two districts in our state, is the city of Honolulu from Makapu'u in the east all the way to Mililani and to Kapolei. And that's home to 710,000 people that are my constituents in the United States House of Representatives. That's half the population of our fine state. And so I definitely am responsible for representing the urban part of our state. And of course, in our very small state, indirectly, I also represent the other half as full state delegation, including my partners, Senators Schatz and Hirono and Representative Takuda. Welcome to another of my regular live community meeting talk stories. This is my seventh of 2026. I've done hundreds throughout my years in Congress, seven here in 2026. The first earlier this year, the first six earlier this year were in person. This one is a teletalk story. I find that it really reaches folks that can't usually come to one of my in-person, so I try to mix it up. And for me, these talk stories are absolutely critical to my representing our Hawaii and you 5,000 miles away in Congress. I spend over half of my year every year on Capitol Hill, a long way away from you. And I very much need to stay in touch with you at all times. I feel that I need to report back to you on what I'm up to in Congress. And I especially need your guidance and I need to answer your questions. And these talk stories are one of the great ways that I have to do exactly that. And so I look forward to another one of my talk stories. Just a note about how this talk story is gonna go. First of all, I'm going to give you a congressional report. Hopefully, I won't go more than about half an hour with that. And then at that point, I'm going to turn this over to you to listen to your concerns and try to answer your questions. To get your questions into the line and to me, please email me at ed.case@mail.house.gov. Or if you're watching this in Facebook, you can put your comments in Facebook and that will come in straight there and my staff will get them to me. We're going to have to end at 7:30 p.m. if we don't end before that. I also want to start by giving you some background information on my office and how to get more information on all of the stuff that I'm up to and how to get your thoughts to me and to contact me further. The fastest, easiest, and best way into my office, into my activities is through my website at case.house.gov. That is case.house.gov. And on case.house.gov, I've tried to add in all of the possible information anybody might need about my office, my activities, and how to get in touch with me. With that, I'm going to turn this over to your questions for the time that we have remaining. And I am going to start working my way down through the list that I have here that has my questions. And so I'm just going to start from the top here. Jeff asks, where will we begin to heal and reverse the damage Trump has caused us and the United States and our standing in the world? Two areas to focus on here. First of all, in our system of checks and balances, if we have a working system of checks and balances, if we have a working Congress, regardless of who's in control in Congress, if Congress is doing its job, then we are at least checking this president. And again, my view and my belief is that we are in the situation we're in, and not just because President Trump chooses what I believe are not the right decisions for our country, whether it's our international standing. Didn't agree with the president on basically withdrawing from much of the world. I didn't agree with the president on terminating funding of key programs to much of the world that people depend on for their very lives. Certainly, I certainly disagree with the president that he has the sole authority to wage war, whether it's Iran or elsewhere. And so, but the problem is, again, that Congress, at least under the current majority, is not providing that check and balance. So this is an unchecked president, and that's dangerous. And so, if either the Republican majority can, find its way to actually fulfilling its constitutional duty, or the majority is replaced, then we will have an effective system of checks and balances. But the bigger picture really is that we have the leaders that we elect in this country, and we have elected leaders today across the country, and those leaders are doing what they're doing. And so ultimately, how do we reverse the damage in your case? And I believe you're accurate in many areas. Um, that's something that the American people have to decide is what they want, and that's a matter of elections. Um, let's see. Mo asks, can you offer insight on the future of Social Security benefits? I'm 64 and plan to apply at 67 for my full retirement age. So there's nothing that is going to happen in the next 3 years or 5 years or 8 years that affects you personally. There will not be any changes, nor would I ever support any changes that would affect people that are right there, right at retirement age, or even anywhere close. But let me talk about reality. Um, this is the reality that I talked about. This is the reality of facing our challenges honestly, identifying solutions, and acting upon them in the best way we can. Many times, well in advance of when it becomes a problem. If I know something's a problem in 10 or 20 years, frankly, I want to fix it today so it's not a problem in 10 or 20 years. I don't want to kick it down the road so at year 9 I'm facing a crisis. And Social Security is on that path. And this is not me talking, okay? This is the trustees of the Social Security Trust Fund. So we operate the Social Security Fund as a trust fund. Money comes in, money goes out. Trustees are responsible for making sure it's sustainable over time. And what the trustees tell us, these are independent trustees. You can find their report online. If you can't, I'll send it to you. What they tell us is that because expenses are exceeding income into the trust fund, that somewhere around 8 to 9 years from now, the trust fund will be depleted. And at that point, there will be an automatic reduction of benefits unless we fix Social Security. Now, that's the reality. And sometimes people don't like to hear it, and sometimes they get angry and they try to shoot the messenger. But here I am, the messenger, and I'm telling you that's the case. And so we have to act on Social Security to be able to assure that it works for all of us over the next generations. It's been one of the most successful programs that we have ever enacted in our country. It has lifted literally tens of millions out of poverty, saved people from death. This is a great program, but it is not on a sustainable path. And so I have introduced a number of pieces of legislation in Congress to fix Social Security, make sure it is sustained over time. These solutions do not have to call for radical reductions of benefits, which would be the case if we did nothing. And so that's the reality of Social Security. Again, I don't think it's going to affect your own decision, but the reality is that we do have to act now to sustain it over time. Daniel asks, how can we preserve our alliances? This is a critical question for us because in our world, which is a dangerous world, I talked about the People's Republic of China who want to supplant us. I talked about Russia, who is, pursuing a fifth year of war, completely unauthorized war against any rule of international law in Ukraine. These people do not have our best interests in mind, and they will continue to pursue these directions unless we deter them from doing so. And for that, we have to provide many things. First of all, of course, always a strong national defense. I'm very deeply involved in that. We also have to help the rest of the world with their issues, whether it's trade or whether it's what we call soft power, which is development assistance, assistance with infrastructure development. We cannot and should not do this alone. We cannot do this alone. And so we need our friends and allies around the world to work with us, and they want to work with us. They don't want to go into another form of governance. They don't want the PRC to dominate their country, their space, their trade, to dictate to them what they can and cannot do, reduce them to a vassal state. And yet we have, under this administration, I believe, not done right by many of our alliances. We have arbitrarily imposed tariffs, even on our friends and allies, countries like Japan and Korea, Australia. We have walked away from international agreements that help the rest of the world. We have sent inconsistent messages on our intent to continue to participate in the world. And this is all very, very dangerous for us. And so, frankly, the way to preserve our alliances is to preserve our alliances. And that takes either a change in the direction of the current leadership of our country or a change in the current leadership of our country. All right. Let's see. Karen, I think that is, asks, what are you actively doing to try to reestablish the U.S. Congress as the Article 1 responsible entity to control our people's money? Well, I think that's what you asked. This is very, very much part of my job as an appropriator. My job as an appropriator is to assert our Article 1 authority and responsibility to decide how the people's money is going to be spent. And Article 1 refers to Article 1 of the Constitution, which in so many words says that the people govern themselves through Congress. People govern themselves through Congress. And so appropriations is one of those areas. And so I have actively opposed this president when this president has tried to stop the funding of monies that have already been appropriated by Congress, already signed into law. If you see my 246-page summary of my actions to oppose this president, many of those will be in this space. I've also opposed rescissions of monies, and I've actually participated in lawsuits in court to stop the president from doing what he is trying to do, which is to basically usurp Congress's constitutional authority to govern this country. And so there's much more on my website. I agree with you. That is one of our principal issues. And again, I'm deeply involved in it from a appropriations committee perspective. I'm going to shift over here. What more can be done to reduce gas prices? What can be done in other ways as we approach the summer travel season? Okay. Thank you for that question. I spoke at length already about there's two parts, I guess, of the answer to that question. Why are gas prices high? Well, obviously, the first part of gas prices being high is immediate to the situation we're confronted with right now, which is the Iran war. And of course, one of the consequences of the Iran war that I don't believe this president fully thought through was the impact on world oil supplies and world oil shipping to move oil supplies around. About 20% of the world's oil comes through the Straits of Hormuz, which Iran, of course, is, as a practical matter, influencing very deeply right now. And you can't take 20% of world oil off the market in any way, shape, or form and not have oil prices and gas at the end of the day go up. So clearly one solution is to restore some stability in world oil supply as well as world oil shipping. But beyond that, the fact is that we do have to continue, and I'm speaking only about the federal government, because I believe that there's some very significant solutions, especially in the state government, that can reduce our gas prices here. But clearly, from a gas price perspective, we again need to move to renewable forms of energy. because if oil is competing with gas and kerosene and diesel and petroleum and fertilizer as byproducts of oil, then obviously that's different than if we've got energy being created by renewable sources that are not using oil. And that's before we even discuss moving our gas, our vehicles off of gas to start with wherever we can. And so this is a part of a big picture strategy that's partly just big picture long-term federal policy in partnership with state and county governments, as well as dealing with the real consequences of disruptions in world oil supply from crises, whether they be natural disasters or wars. Um, Matt asks, I got a question for Medicare. Why is the president taking away Medicare for us Hawaii people? Matt, referring well, there's two things going on. First of all, I think what you probably are referring to is Medicaid. And Medicaid is the federal law that assists states to give people, especially people that really have no practical option to get healthcare anywhere else, to make sure that they have healthcare. This is a basic human need. It's something that we need to assure to all of us, and not just those of us that are lucky enough to, have good, solid healthcare plans, even if we're paying too much for them. And so this president has gone after Medicaid. This was our so-called budget reconciliation bill from last year. I fought against that very, very hard. My Republican colleagues passed it out of Congress. The president signed it. And that is reducing federal contributions to Medicaid throughout the country, including right here in Hawaii, where we have a very high Medicaid population. And so that is causing the state government to have to step up to the plate and supplement that in many ways. And so I'm hoping that we reverse those cuts to Medicaid because I don't believe that that is at all acceptable. This administration has also taken some more recent actions that affect Medicare costs as well. And that is also, from my perspective, not acceptable. I spoke earlier about Social Security and how critical a program that is. Well, Medicare is a critical program also especially for older folks as they retire and don't have employer-sponsored plans. But Medicare also takes care of many, many other people, not just seniors. And the president has gone after Medicare as well to try to curb benefits under Medicare. Some of that, by the way, I think is getting a little confused with some of the actions of some of our healthcare companies that are curtailing voluntarily on their own dime programs such as Medicare Advantage, which again, many, many people here in Hawaii rely upon. As to why the president is doing that, you can read his statements. I don't agree with him. What he believes, I suppose, is that the federal government should not be helping people in great need, and that's not the government that I believe in. Let's see. You also asked Matt. I'll just read this. How do you feel about Trump calling us a racial nation and not a tribal nation? And are we going to get any justice about it? And when are we going to comments about gas, Medicaid, and the war with Iran? Well, I don't agree with the president's statements about a racial nation. I think we're one nation. Clearly, I think we're just as from a national perspective as we treat that here in Hawaii. We're a model for the rest of the country. So, any mention of racial division, stoking any racial fires is unacceptable. I think for anybody, including especially a president of the United States. If you're referring by tribal nation to the indigenous peoples of our country, including Native Hawaiians, I very much support our programs and our longstanding laws and understandings and treaties in many cases with our indigenous peoples here in Hawaii. Of course, we're the home the Native Hawaiians, the indigenous peoples of our country whose origins lie in Hawaii. They're a major part of my own constituency, and I focus very much on their particular situation and needs, and try to advance, especially federal programs built up over a couple of generations now of assistance to Native Hawaiian education, healthcare, business, uh, and on and on. You can see a summary of that on my website. But the president and his administration are clearly going after many of those programs now. And that to me is just in complete opposition to long established law and long established constitutional authority and dozens of federal laws benefiting, not hundreds, benefiting indigenous peoples. And so I strongly oppose all of those efforts, especially as they affect Native Hawaiians. You asked about the war with Iran, which obviously is a critical issue for us today. I haven't fully addressed it. Um, so let me start with a couple of observations. First of all, Iran is, under its current leadership, under its current status in the world, is not our friend. That should be obvious. So I'm under no illusions at all that Iran, under its current leadership, is a threat to our country and to our world. And Iran is not going to stop its ambitions, which are to foment terrorism and to develop a nuclear capability that it believes will allow it to do what it wants to do without any country standing in its way. And we need to make sure that both of those things stop. And we can only hope that the leadership of Iran will change, so we can welcome Iran into kind of the community of nations, because it can be and a great country. The people of Iran, many of whom I've met, are great people, and they deserve far better. But none of that justifies a president waging war on another country without congressional authorization. That's fundamental to our Constitution. That is a direct requirement of our law. And this president has not done that. And so I have opposed him and this war because I believe it's unauthorized. Now, if the president came in to Congress and said, this is a situation we face, these are the options that we have, these are the consequences of each of those options, these are the costs, and this is what I think we should do, and I'm asking you to work with me and to authorize these actions, then I would consider it, because I believe that there could be circumstances under which war with Iran would be justified. This president hasn't done any of that. And so, from my perspective, not only was this a hastily thought up war that the president obviously thought was going to be over inside of 2 to 3 weeks, not only is it having widespread consequences around the world. I already talked about oil prices, but more severely, really, the ability of friends and allies to even defend themselves is possibly affected, and those consequences we can't ignore. And so I have voted for a war powers resolution that basically says the president can't continue unless Congress authorizes it 3 or 4 times already. I'm going to have another vote this week on it. And I'm going to keep voting that way until this president does what he is required to do under our Constitution, which is to come to Congress and talk with us, and through us, the American people, about why it is so important that we wage war in Iran, that we lose our own, as we already have. 13 of our incredible service members have been lost in Iran, that we use significant portions of our national defense capacity, that we have other consequences, both anticipated and unanticipated. I can't. I don't think any president should have the unchecked authority to enter us into war, and we've seen that throughout our history, that's a bad idea. Jonathan asks, what are you doing to protect essential government workers? Why won't you consider passing legislation to ensure those workers don't miss a paycheck? Well, I've absolutely supported legislation that essential government workers don't miss a paycheck during unfortunate government shutdowns, as we've seen too often over the past crippling year, even with a number of shutdowns. So I don't know where you're getting that information from. If you can email me at ed.case and mail.house.gov, I can give you a longer summary of my activities. And I have fought very, very hard to avoid government shutdowns to start with. Again, I'm on the Appropriations Committee. I believe that many of my fellow colleagues on appropriations work very hard to get our government funded. It gets tangled up in frankly, you know, unacceptable disputes where people hold up government funding to achieve some very minority end. And so I'm working very hard to make sure we don't have government shutdowns to start with, but that our government workers are also taken care of when we do have shutdowns. And so, again, if you want to talk further about that, let me know. Okay, I'm going to have to start moving along a little bit here. Let's see, RM, how could we invest in improved public housing and update policy and procedures? Let's see, for housing first that will address chronic housing needs. Yes, I agree with you on this, and I do not believe that the administration is pursuing the right policies in terms of federal assistance to housing. Basically, this administration in many areas wants to get out of the business of helping on housing, especially those in significant need. Now, I don't think the federal government is responsible for everybody's housing throughout the country. That's not the job of the federal government. But the federal government, I think, can help and should help with those in particular need, as we do with rental assistance with 8A. We also appropriate a lot of money every year for the federal government to help with the development of affordable housing, and we provide federal tax credits that will assist with affordable housing. And I agree with all of that. But I don't agree with this administration's attempt to curtail all of those programs because I think they're critical to us taking care of one of the principal drivers of the high cost of living here, as well as just an area where people need to live in a house, in a dwelling. And so that's a core need. And I think we all have a responsibility through our governments to try to help out with that. Let's see. We've got a question here on mental health crisis from David. Kind of the same answer as the prior one on housing. We clearly do have many areas that are in crisis, as you put it, from a mental health perspective, with many of our fellow citizens suffering from many types of mental health from many causes. And I think that we have tried to help again through the federal government with programs that help. I'm particularly focused, for example, on our veterans who have some very severe mental health issues, especially combat related, but not exclusively. We have just unacceptably high rates of veteran suicide still that just grieve you every time you hear about another one. And so these are areas where our federal government should legitimately try to help. Again, this is an area where really in the whole part of our government that you want to divide up our federal government into kind of defense and non-defense, and we'd spend roughly the same amount of money in defense. Where you see this administration trying to reduce the non-defense side by 10, 20, 30% in some areas, well, they're increasing defense. And I don't believe that either of those is the right answer, and they have to be in some balance. I do believe that we need to provide for our national defense, but we cannot do that at the expense of some programs that literally mean life and death to many people out there. You can get more information on the website or else email me. Let's see. Pamela, you asked me kind of the same question on public housing, but if you need more information, please email me at ed.case@mail.house.gov. Let's see. PM, you asked, how can we extend Ward Village security to include Queen and Waimanu streets in Kaka'ako? I have heard about this issue. It is not directly a federal issue, and so I would probably not get directly involved in this. This is an issue probably for the city. However, This is a good example of individual constituent services where you have a question, you have a need. I'm not really the right person to act on it for you because it's not a direct connection to my office, but we can certainly try to get you in touch with the right people. What we would normally do in this is we would refer you over to the city, the right people in the city, and we'd also connect you with your city council member for that district, so that the council member can actually, because that is their kuleana in particular. So if you want to give me a call at 808 7, sorry, that's about to go with my cell, 808 650 6688 or ed.case@mail.house.gov. We will try to help you with that. Let's see. Leslie, politics is quid pro quo. What did you have to give up in order to obtain progress on your initiatives, i.e., KE funding, voter ID, etc.? I'm sorry, that's ICE funding. I guess I don't really look at it that way, to be honest, Leslie. You know, I we have a very small delegation. We have 4 members of our delegation out of 535 members of Congress. We're a very small fish in a very big pond, and we're 5,000 miles away from DC. And I can tell you from being in DC for many years now that DC don't get Hawaii. They don't understand us. They don't know a whole bunch about us. They're certainly intrigued by us, which is a good thing. But the fact is that I'm not in a big delegation like New York or California or Texas or Florida. So what I try to do, this is how I try to do it. I try to make the best decisions I can. And on votes that are important, broad votes and initiatives, I'm going to make the call with your guidance. One way or the other, it's not going to really matter, necessarily who wants me to do what and why. But where I can help people, my colleagues, I do try to help them. If they come to me, for example, I'll give you a good example. In Hawaii, we've had a very, very long partnership with the state of Alaska. Why? Because we came in at the same time. Somehow we were, kind of the new kids on the block, and we came in. We're both small states. Alaska only has 1 representative. And we need to band together. We also have we have a lot of similarities. We're both a long way away from the continent of the United States. We have some of the same issues as a result in high costs of living, or food, or shipping, or healthcare, and so indigenous peoples. And so if I can help my colleague from Alaska, whoever that is, and I've had 3 or 4 colleagues from Alaska since I was in Congress, sometimes R's and sometimes D's. If they come to me and say, "Hey, can you help me out with something from Alaska?" It may not be something that I particularly know anything about, or it's not particularly relevant to my world, but they ask me for help. And as long as it's a good, solid effort, I'm going to try to help them. But I'm also going to feel free to go to them and ask them for help later on. Now, to me, that's not a quid pro quo. I'm not trading, a vote for, something that I wouldn't vote for against otherwise, because I don't do that. But I do try to help where I can. And so I think that's the way I try to handle and get things done for a very small state like Hawaii in a very, very big pond. Let's see, Ben, does the cost of healthcare register as a priority? Absolutely. It absolutely register as a priority, and I did try to speak to that earlier on in my opening remarks. Cost of healthcare is a major driver of the overall cost of living. There's many causes of the high cost of healthcare. It's very, very frustrating to get this right. We have it for part of America a great healthcare system, and for part of America not a great healthcare system. We have a lot of inequality on cost, and a lot of policies out there that are simply crippling a the reforms that are needed in healthcare to provide high quality, affordable healthcare to all Americans. And so this is a very high priority to me, and it's a high priority to you. I've asked you collectively, directly, what are your priorities? This is one of the highest. And so I have a pretty long summary that I can send to you of that it kind of gives you an example of what I've done in the healthcare space. I mentioned a couple of them tonight. I believe very much in controlling the cost of prescription drugs, which is crippling to so many Americans. I believe very much in preserving and strengthening Medicare. I believe very much in Medicaid and oppose the reductions in Medicaid funding. We have some very, very specific changes that we could make in healthcare that would, help things along. That I'm hoping that I've co-sponsored in Congress that I'm hoping to pass. But I can give you a pretty long list if you will email me at ed.case@mail.house.gov, and I welcome your comments as well. Let's see. I think that's Helani. Do you support Section 224 of the NDAA? Actually, I've got a lot of incoming on this right now. I believe this refers. Haven't had a chance to dig into this. This just started to pick up in the last few days, but I believe this refers to um, cooperation between the United States and Israel in terms of technology development, especially in the defense space. And I have not read the specific language. The A is our annual military authorization bill that's actually coming before the House Armed Services Committee. Actually, I think it's tomorrow or the next day. So this is very topical right now. But I do believe that we should try to cooperate with other people throughout the world, especially those that we are partners with or our joint national defense, to develop technologies and to develop those industries and really take the best practices from each and the best results. And so, again, I haven't read this particular language, but we do this with a lot of countries around the world. Obviously, Israel is controversial in and of itself, which I suspect is why there's a lot of attention to Section 224 in particular. But it's not functionally different from what we do, for example, with Japan or Australia or the United Kingdom, et cetera. And as I understand it, the technology development under 224 is not direct weapons development. But again, I'll check. If you want to email me at ed.case@mail.house.gov, I'm sure that I will have a better answer for you in the next couple of days. And that's true of everybody else that has written me on this. Puakea, can Congress hope to control the president? While I spoke to this earlier, absolutely, Congress should hope to control the president. That's our job. We are supposed to be exerting checks and balances on this president. Again, I will repeat that one of the major failings of the current Congress generally, and my majority colleagues, my Republican majority colleagues in both the House and the Senate specifically, one of their major failings is ceding control of Congress to the president, functionally ceding control of Congress to the president. And that's very, very dangerous. What that means is that Congress is not doing our jobs. Again, this doesn't have to do with whether you support policies or not. Obviously, my Republican colleagues are probably going to prefer a Republican president to a Democratic president in general. But it is dangerous for them not to do their jobs, and that is what they either have to decide that they need to step up and check this president, or the solution at that point is that the majority has to change, or the Congress has to change by the will of the people, and that's kind of the reality right there. And that's, of course, why the midterm elections will say so much about which direction the people want this country to go in. Of course, that doesn't affect the president directly, but it certainly affects Congress. Let's see. Okay. Lisa, I'm concerned about our elections, which are solely by mail. Are we in danger from the current administration invalidating our secure voting process or seizing our voter records, as happened in Georgia? Tulsi Gabbard's watch. Um, let's see. First of all, our elections in Hawaii are not solely by mail. I mean, we do have an option for people to vote in person. I think the figure is something like 98% of our voting in Hawaii now is by mail. And I, by the way, I support voting by mail. I think that it has been successful. I think that it has opened up voting to many people who might not vote otherwise. And so I'm not somebody that opposes voting by mail, and I don't agree that there are fraud risks with widespread fraud risks with voting by mail. I think the checks are sufficient on that. But there is an option for in-person voting. So I have no problem with the system that Hawaii follows. Um, Obviously, this president and this administration have consistently over time criticized election security and have made it into, I think, a very unfortunate political issue, which causes many voters, too many voters to doubt their election results. And I think that that is not an appropriate position to take by this president. Um, and I have certainly, of course, been concerned at the attempt to seize certain voting records by this president. In fact, I'm not just concerned about it, I strongly oppose it. I believe I'm even on some lawsuits at this point that go very much to this particular issue. So yes, we are concerned about that, and so I'm not gonna sugarcoat your concern. I hope and believe that our combination of what check and balance there is in Congress, and I think many of my colleagues, including my Republican colleagues, do not agree with the president on this. Very much believe that we should, not particularly that we should not be not be pursuing, seizing voter records. There have been bills proposed that have not come up for a full vote, not because Democrats oppose them, but because Republicans themselves oppose them. So I think we need to continue that particular effort. And of course, the courts give us a great deal of latitude. Or they've been very deeply involved in this as well. Um, uh, Renee, what can we do about medical insurance costs? As a small business owner, I pay $2,700 a month for a family of four. I've spoken to this, I've tried to speak to this a couple of times. That's not acceptable. That cost is way up. It is crippling. It comes from a lot of different areas. That's not anything that anybody should accept. There are many solutions. Some of the solutions are at the federal government level with reforms to national health care. I talked about the cost of prescription drugs. We have a number of kind of intermediary steps in terms of prescription drugs and the other delivery of healthcare that are basically taking too much money out of the system. And so and that's before we get to some of the solutions that we can pursue at the state government level as well. I don't think I'm giving you a fully satisfactory answer, and that's because this is a very tough area to get to the bottom of all of the answers. Again, I have prepared these 14 or 15 pages of a summary of my efforts in terms of trying to curb healthcare costs, ranging from administrative costs, taking over too much of the system, to controlling the actual cost of prescription drugs, to making sure that the supply chains are open for medical equipment. Tariffs have very significantly affected much of that because a lot of our medical equipment that comes into our country, either in finished product or in raw product, comes from other countries and it's subject to very, very high tariffs. And so when the president goes out there and imposes high tariffs on medical equipment, that cost is going to be passed along to you through your healthcare insurance. But this is again a multifaceted problem, and we've got to chip away at solutions on a number of levels. Tammy, is there any updates on the potential theft by Elon's Doge bro, who downloaded very sensitive information from the Social Security Administration database affecting possibly millions of dead and alive citizens under the jurisdiction of the United States? I don't have an update for you. I believe that this is still under investigation and still under. I'm trying to remember whether this is subject to actually a criminal prosecution right now. If you will email me directly at ed.case@mail.house.gov, I will try to answer that because I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Similarly to Eugene, you asked SSI tax-free supplemental security income, right? I don't know. If you will email me, I'll try to answer that for you because I just don't have the ins and outs of tax law. Let me go back to the other side here, see what I got. Let's see, let me just give me a chance to just screen through this and make sure that I got everything. Okay, I think that's the gist of what you asked me there. And unfortunately, I've got to wind this down at this point. So there's a couple of other questions that I'm not going to be able to get to, which I apologize for. If you will please email me your questions at ed.case@mail.house.gov. Some of the questions that you've asked are a little more complicated to answer, so I'm not going to get into them right here, but I do have comprehensive answers for you on several of the questions that I see are pending. Let me up with repeating a couple of things before our time expires. First of all, I really, really appreciate these opportunities to talk story with you, to, again, report to you on what I'm doing in Congress and why. But for me, it's not just about me telling you what I'm up to. I think that's actually secondary to your asking me your questions. So when you ask me questions, I learn from your questions. But also your guidance is really critical. I represent, again, 710,000 people throughout my district. That's 710,000 separate opinions on where we should be going as a country, as a Hawaii. And my job is to try my very, very best to represent all of my constituents as best I can. And for that, I need guidance. I need to think things through with you. I need to decide what the right thing is to do, even if people don't agree with me. I still have to make those calls. I still have to try to do the right thing, and I can't do that without having a very open line of communication with each and all of you. So I appreciate that very much. Again, I'm going to repeat a little bit just to be sure that that you have this down. Number one, the fastest, easiest, and most thorough way to get information on me is my website at case.house.gov. That's case.house.gov, and it's been flashing up on the screen here. I see throughout our talk. On my website, I have information on my activities. I have referred a couple of times here to summaries of my activities in various areas, but I have summaries pretty much on all of the areas that you have asked me questions about, from the Trump administration to national defense to healthcare. There's other stuff that we haven't talked about that is really critical to Social Security. There's other stuff that we haven't talked about here tonight in any real way. that I think is also very, very critical and that I have information on my website about, which would include, again, things like veterans, civil rights, which is a critical part of my agenda, small business, given that our state is really the king of small business, with virtually all of our businesses being small businesses. Labor, a summary of my efforts in terms of labor, women-related issues, a long summary on that, natural resources, foreign affairs, and more. That's all on my website, and I can also send that information to you if you will email me. I also have on my website my votes, all of my votes, right there on my website, so you can easily see how I vote, fully transparent. I also have information on my activities on appropriations, including my community project funding. I also have all of my press releases and statements, et cetera, on my website. And finally, information on our constituent services, as well as how to contact me. That's all on my website. Again, also email me at ed.case@mail.house.gov, questions or needs, or you can call my district office at 808-650-6688. With that, our time is up. It's never enough. I always finish these things wishing that there was more time. But I really appreciate all of you who joined us here tonight. Again, with your further questions and comments, just get in touch with us. I hope to see you along the way. I'll be out and about my community as I always do. And if you see me, please stop me and ask me your questions. It is my deep honor to serve you in Congress. It's a responsibility that I take very, very seriously, and that I consider myself to be your full partner in a better country, a better world, a better Hawaii. So with that, aloha and ahui ho.
And a special mahalo up front to the University of Hawaii and to our great partners in Australia and New Zealand for hosting this. And of course to my favorite conservationist, Suzanne here, for putting this all together along with many of you. Look, we all already, because we are here, we understand the critical importance of biodiversity to the health of our world, of our ecosystems, of our biospheres, of our special parts of our world. So we're all on the same page already. And because we're all here as well, we all understand that in the Pacific, we face unique risks and consequences from harm to our biosphere, to our special places. Our natural isolation, Hawaii, of course, isolated from the rest of the world for millennia, millions of years really, and the Pacific Islands and New Zealand, and of course Australia, isolated from the rest of the world since the Torres Straits closed again so many millennia ago. And so we understand perfectly in the worlds that we inhabit here the cascading effects of changing our ecosystems, of introducing invasive species and other risks to them. And we, of course, painfully understand the consequences of the loss of our special world, of too many species at this point. We all have our stories. The story we tell here in Hawaii is the rats that were introduced with Western contact, and the mongoose that was introduced to control the rats, and the mongoose that then destroyed the bird species which the rats were destroying to start with. And we haven't figured out the next chapter in that yet. For us to have a network of 50 plus different laws in terms of what you can and can't bring in and take out of a state to other parts of the country, or for that matter, any state of monitoring what comes in from an international perspective is not a good idea. So we're going to set up a national program, and we're going to enforce this nationally, and by extension, you, the state, cannot do that. And so we have a broader policy question, which always arises in preemption. Preemption is nothing new. You apply preemption to artificial intelligence regulation, to prescription drug coverage, to any number of issues, you always have the policy dilemma of when does the federal government have to take it over and lay down a national standard, and when do the states get to decide what they're going to do. The reality is that in this area, the federal government has preempted it, which wouldn't be a bad idea if they did a good job of it, but of course they're not. You also have some very practical opposition that arises from practical considerations. For example, here in Hawaii, the sheer volume of planes. So here in Hawaii, for those of you that don't know, we have about 1.4 million people. And of course, we come and go. We go to the continent, we go overseas, and we come home. But there are 10 million others per year of arrivals that come into Hawaii. And so therefore, you need to be signing up for a regime that requires 10 plus million people to be inspected if you're really going to do this right every time they come back in. And oh, by the way, those ships that come in, obviously we have many, many ships that come in. And to do this right, you would want to inspect every single container in one way or another, which we do not do right now. We do sampling of containers, and we also do not sufficiently inspect ballast water, which is a major source of invasive species to our marine environments. And so you quickly get into some policy discussions about, okay, well, if this is the volume, then exactly what volume do you lay down these requirements at? What sampling do you lay it down so that you have an effective preventive mechanism? You're not just going through the motion. Who will do the inspections? My particular bill, the Hawaii Invasive Species Act, would require the airlines to do that. So you, airlines, have to provide for these inspection requirements before people get on your planes from somewhere else, not after they arrive on the honor system, before they get on those planes. And of course, the airlines don't like that because that hinders the movement, free movement of passengers, especially tourists, to Hawaii. Should the federal government inspect? Well, that would be a good idea if we laid down good, solid requirements, especially on the ships side of things through the U.S. Coast Guard. But then again, you have the question of who will pay for that. So all of this requires somebody to pay for it. So although the risk is there and the solution is there, the practical realities lead you to tremendous opposition, which is what my particular bill has faced. And I suspect anybody that proposed something comparable would face. Now, this is a little frustrating for me, frankly, because there are policy successes along these lines out there in the world. And for all of those from New Zealand here, thank you for showing the way. Because when I wrote that bill, I used New Zealand. I went around the world and said, who's doing this right? And every single answer was New Zealand was doing it right. That New Zealand had a regime for inspecting people on the way in that was far stricter than we did. They weren't having any problem with tourists. And as to ships coming in and cargo, they basically had a regime that was set down there as well. So I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to the outcome of your, I will get my favorite conservationist to report to me on your conclusions and findings, and mahalo. I know we're probably behind time. I'm happy to answer a few quick questions and then get you on with your work.